remember, we want you all to be part of this conversation. For the next half hour, we answer your questions, we air your comments, so you can submit them now under the live stream of the show on our Facebook pages. Now, Dr. Prince, I want to start with you. Obviously I was just alluding to what happened on Friday, but until that time, gun store sales were actually considered general merchandise. So do you think that this will really help, this category change make any difference?
I think it's an interesting idea. And I think of Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis and that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so I can't help but think in a system that values open research, open understanding, that the more we know, the more we know. And we don't really know what we don't know. And so this is an interesting new approach to think about it. And I can't help but wonder, does it create the possibility that, when I buy something online, they start to offer me, I buy a coffee machine, and it offers me then the espresso beans because it knows I'm Cuban. So if you purchase a weapon, does it now maybe suggest that you buy the hand lock? Does it maybe now direct us to say, hey, this is someone we should get education and make sure that they're appropriately educated? Does it create those kinds of opportunities? And then I got to wonder, does it help law enforcement? When you think about the way when I move on an app driving, it can track my movements in a global way, not me as an individual. Does it tell us something about illegal guns and the way they're trafficked, from other states into New York, for example?
Yeah, Matt, I wonder, too, if this will help better track any suspicious surges that may be one gun but a voluminous amount of ammunition.
So thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So, yes, what we're currently looking at is the record keeping of ammunition sales with regards to the purchases via credit card sales. Unless there's someone that's actually going to take all this information, analyze this information, and feed it back to law enforcement in real time, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to do much to help. However, as the doctor alluded, what he was just talking about, will it provide for the ability for us to sell a lock for a gun for safe use and storage? Yes, it absolutely will. As far as the tracking of the sales of ammunition, I don't think it's going to do much just yet. I think long-term down the road, through analytics and looking at the actual ability to see and track crime related to the sale of ammunitions, I would say about 3 to 4 years down the road, we'll get a good, clearer picture of it.
All right, Dr. Prince, I want to talk a little bit about these gun-free zones. One of the, major things that we've seen come out recently, specifically when you take a look at now Times Square.
Yeah, it's I know it's hard to. I grew up, watching The Lone Ranger on TV in black and white, and I love John Wayne movies. And as fascinating as that is, we don't live in the Wild West in that sense. And I think there's a real challenge there, making sure that we have safe zones where you have dense populations where no matter how well trained you are as an individual, I think the risk is real to bystanders and the challenges that would be implied. And I also think the risk is real to law enforcement in those settings. How do you identify the individual that's a problem? So, finding places that weapons are not the right place for the general populace to walk around with. I drive a car. It's a dangerous thing. I can't drive a car anywhere I want. I can't really drive it through Times Square because of the traffic. So I think some common sense planning around how we interact with each other in a public setting is really critical, and trying to find that middle ground in those new laws.
And Matt, I know when it comes to those new laws, you've really seen some changes when it comes to training and people reaching out to you now.
Yes. So recently, the New York State Police and also the Division of Criminal Justice Services, which we're certified from, not only for armed guard training, but also through the NRA, the training curriculum that's come down allows for 16 hours worth of in-classroom training, where this past weekend, we had 20 students come in, and it was an eye-opener for them. They all thought it was going to be a drudgery of sitting in a chair, death by PowerPoint, and it actually wasn't. You're dealing with highly qualified and certified instructors that are teaching you this state-mandated curriculum that allows for every component with regards to safe use and disposal and handling of a firearm, recognizing the signs of emotionally disturbed persons, interaction with law enforcement, sensitive places, making sure that this mandated training is disseminated appropriately and accurately to the public.
And what about the character references as part of this?
So on any application, very good question, on any application, you have to provide a minimum for character references that will attest to your good moral character. If they can attest to your good moral character, and that's part of the application process, the application will then further down as far as the actual investigation and making sure you're free from any criminal conviction. The character references go to your good moral character. That furthers the investigation as far as a pistol permit is concerned.
And I know, Dr. Prince, you know, you've had to deal with some of the repercussions of what happens when a gun is handled in the wrong hands.
Yeah, you know, it's one of the great tragedies, and I think, you know, Matt and I think 90+% of responsible gun owners agree. A child, a 3-year-old, should never have a loaded weapon that they can unintentionally discharge on themselves, a sibling, a parent. I've had that happen this summer. You know, this summer at Cohen's, which is the largest level 1 pediatric trauma center in New York State, we saw the largest number of pediatric gun injuries in our history. And that goes along with what's happening across our country. The #1 killer of children in the United States right now is gun violence. And that's, you know, bears repeating. The #1 killer of gun violence of children is gun violence in the United States of America. And it used to be cars, it used to be other things, and we worry about pediatric cancer and all the things that we as parents, I have 3 children, we worry about our children. But right now, the #1 problem for our children is gun violence. And so addressing unintentional injuries, addressing homicide, addressing suicide, and the mental health component that supports that are really critical components of our national response to do something.
I know in New Jersey they have this statewide affirmative firearms enforcement. They call it SAFE, and the acting attorney general there just appointed some new supervisors. And really what they're trying to do is hold the manufacturers, the sellers of guns accountable, Matt.
So to that extent, you know, some of the manufacturers that opted out to even comment on any type of the requirements for them to answer questions. I can't personally speak for them either on a personal level or a professional level, but what I can say is this, is that to the doctor's credit, as far as unintentional discharges, the onus really falls on the parent's responsibility. If they're going to carry a firearm, if they're going to have a handgun in the house, the onus really falls down to the parent's shoulders as far as early education. Introducing a child in the home to a handgun or a firearm of any sort, making sure you're removing the stigmatism from it, early intervention by identifying somebody who may have a mental health issue. This country has a mental health issue. That particular component, the Office of Mental Health, is part of the 16-hour requirement for anyone seeking a concealed carry weapons permit. They have to undergo the understanding that mental health is an issue. And if they're going to have a handgun in the home, they have to understand the early signs of intervention.
And obviously mental health, Dr. Prince, comes into this conversation so often.
Yeah, and I think it's an important component to recognize, but I think it's important not to muddy the waters. It's not all mental health, right? And I think that we do ourselves a disservice that we don't really look for things that we can do to control the issues around gun violence in our country. If we just say that person's crazy, there was nothing we could do about that. That is, first of all, half of the folks who die from gun violence, it's from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And so there's more that we can do there, I think, to identify those people at risk. You wonder again if these new methods will allow us to identify individuals at risk. Clearly, as a large health system, the largest provider of healthcare in New York State, we are working to address those mental health issues where they're appropriate and where we can help. We're in the schools with early school-based education to identify children at risk, helping to connect them through those mechanisms to support. It also has to be said that one of the real victims of gun violence tends to be women, and that a gun being brought into a home really increases the risk to a woman that she will be a victim of gun violence. And so, again, what are our mechanisms to identify family situations that are high risk, and how do we help to intervene to reduce the risk that that weapon is in the wrong hands at the wrong moment?
And, you know, I know, Matt, that New York City, Suffolk, Nassau, Westchester counties, the licenses now need to be renewed every 3 years.
That is correct, Elizabeth. So they're sunsetting where they weren't sunsetting after 5 years. The requirement now, if you plan on having a pistol permit, now also inclusive of the ability to purchase a rifle, your permit will sunset after 3 years. That said, certification at this time is required in order for you to renew your permit. At least this is what we're being told right now from the licensing agencies that we deal with. See, look, one of the things that Guardian Security Training in Deer Park does is when we facilitate pistol permits for applicants that are looking as a first time or to renew a permit, we're making sure that all the licensing agencies' boxes are checked off, making sure that when an application is submitted, that there's no cause for rejection.
All right, and we're going to get more on that, and we're also going to talk about school safety. Our conversation, that is, continues straight ahead. Join us by going to Facebook.